Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Inside Story podcast, where we take you behind the scenes of building diverse businesses and becoming a successful entrepreneur. I'm your host, Dursun Halimova, a business coach and facilitator on a mission to help build impactful businesses. And today, my guest is Guillaume Chatelain, who is the ambassador and organizer of Fuck Up Nights here in Luxembourg. It is a global initiative and event series where entrepreneurs as well as professionals share their experiences of failure and professional mistakes in a hope to change the narratives as well as change the perception of what it means to fail. Guillaume, it's a pleasure to have you on the Inside Story podcast. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Lawson. Welcome to you.
To start off, I will read several unfinished sentences and I would like you to finish them for us, please.
Okay, all right. I'm not prepared to this, so let's start.
All right, here it comes. Being an entrepreneur means
not follow conformity. Have a different line, have an idea, be able to implement, be strong, because it's going to be a long journey.
Okay. Building an impactful business requires
communication first, because now it's very important to get an impact on social media. Also to have a qualified team, I would say, because as I will maybe explain later, I've been most of the time solopreneur, and it's very difficult to start a business alone. So you need to really surround yourself with other people.
All right. Failure is
the feeling when you feel that it's not going to make it. It's not necessarily because you're lacking of finances. It's, I think, the perception of time elapsing without you being successful. And then it's time to turn the page.
Mm-hmm. Success is a result of
work, understanding client needs, not being too much creative, I would say. So it depends on people's personality, and chance. Because sometimes you can meet people who can help you in a good way.
Indeed, sometimes, that's why they say you have to be in the right place in the right time. And the last one, being fulfilled in life means
get a good balance between your professional life and all the outside, I would say, making sports, enjoying drinks with friends, meeting your family. Yes, to have this good work-life balance. Sometimes when you start a business, this is like a legend. You need to really be really 100% in the business, but sometimes you completely cut off from the outside. But it's really good to connect.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think we need to find a way to, maybe it's hard to kind of balance like a 50-50. I think balance would shift with time, right? Sometimes business priorities might take over, other times personal, but then having this manageable kind of a holistic life where you can attend to other areas of your life, right? Other needs, not only business.
It's also a question of experience, because it's difficult to have a good balance when you really start. It's after several attempts then you find a balance. It's a bit like professional life. You're not expecting to get all the experience when you start a job. Then you get used to, and you know what the pro and cons, what to do, and yeah.
Yeah, indeed. All right, Guillaume, thank you so much for sharing your perspectives on these phrases. Now let's move on, and I would like you to tell us a little bit about you, and as well as about the Fuck Up Nights. Why did you start this branch in Luxembourg?
So about Fuck Up Nights is a very recent project. We started it, I would say, in March this year. To be short, I met a friend last year, and we were trying to find a concept to give voice to people who are not often invited, who are not, I would say, successful. Because most of the time in the media, you hear from people who made a fundraising or who are going to be scale up, they are going well. But I would say more than 50% of the other people who are lagging in a standstill or even failing, they don't get any credit and records. And we wanted to focus on people who failed. Then I got to contact some people to know about this initiative. And some people said, you should look over Fuck Up. It's like a worldwide brand. So why don't you contact them? And then I became ambassador for this in Luxembourg.
Indeed. I think it's so important to also talk about as well as share failures, right? And because I think oftentimes we learn much more and we grow much more through our so-called failures, right? As opposed to even successes. So that's why I'm so excited about today's conversation. Hopefully the listeners will also enjoy it as much as we will enjoy discussing it. What do we need to know about you as well as your life experiences to know like the essence of you? What makes Guillaume? What do we need to know? Because I think our listeners, once they know this part, maybe they can better understand what's about to come.
That means I need to get in my life a bit uncover. I need to let people know about things that I didn't share a lot. Well, since I think I've been a teenager, sometimes I used to be, I would say, a lot of time, alone, thinking about things to compose, music, poems, and I managed to be creative, to create all sorts of things. Then I get into studies, and then I started to work in the private and professional life. Before being an entrepreneur, I worked 5 years in this zone. But I would say from start, even in my engineering school, I wanted to create things which were not really present before. So to create and have an impact on what I had to do. So quite quickly, I get a bit bored in the industry I was working in. So it was banking industry. I started in Paris, then moved in Luxembourg. But I had an idea about try to change people's evaluation because I had a kind of bad experience in the bank because I wanted to initiate things and I wasn't able to do it. So I was like, well, I think it would be nice to evaluate people in another way. And that leads me to my first startup. Just to tell you how it worked, I didn't have any experience because my startup was a software. HR software. So I needed to have some coding development, but I was lacking capital. So I was like, okay, I don't have 100K to do a MVP with like a contractor. So I applied to a training program and it was 3 months intensive to know how to code. And then I started my business to code and to develop my first startup in the HR industry.
Talking about failures, I think it's, as you also rightly pointed out, we often hear these success stories, right? And maybe sometimes we hear about the challenges and maybe like small failures here and there entrepreneurs and founders encounter throughout their journey, but less so that we talk about projects that have failed or founders who had ideas and they pursued and it didn't work out. And in your case, you have started two projects, two startups. One that you were referring to called Serpico, right? The assessment tool for professionals. And then your second company was My Dachi, which is a metaverse or an immersive digital reality for cities, which you embarked on with another colleague of yours. So unfortunately, these projects didn't work out in the way you expected them or hoped that they would turn out. What were the biggest learnings from these two experiences? What did you take away?
So I think there are many things which could explain the difficulty of growing business, especially for the first one. I first let the metaverse aside. For Serpico, the HR platform, well, I started alone and I spent a lot of time coding my platform. So then I managed to hire a team with 2 or 3 developers. Some people were interns. But I was every time hands-on in the code. It took me a lot of time to develop things and I didn't really stabilize into a very simple MVP. I wanted to add a lot of features and the client was also happy to get them. But as long as you get more features, you get more risk of having bugs. So you really need to restrict yourself to the minimum and then try to get the money of the contract associated. And with this prospect, it took me a lot of time to sign a permanent contract and it was just a proof of concept. So it was less than a 5-figure amount for that project. And I worked with this company for 1.5 years to get that amount. So that was sadly a negative reward from all this work. That can explain the problem. So I spent too much time in coding, so almost 2 years, and I didn't really focus on sales and try to diversify my clients and prospects. For the second startup, it's a bit different, MyDutchy, because as you said, I was already with another partner. So, and for that time, I was not the tech guy. I didn't code anything. That was my partner who had already a platform ready to sell. I jumped into this adventure because Metaverse was really hype in 2022. And I was like, oh man, it looks like the .NET bubble. So let's go into it and let's try to sell something for Luxembourg. So we had a really good product, and our idea was to sell. It's difficult for me to find where we made mistakes. I think we really paid I would say, we paid the bad news from Facebook and the other leaders who were having problems to first get clients, get traction, and get a product which was stable. And people were not even judging them through our platform, but through Facebook problems. And I mean, maybe I shouldn't have followed the herd for once. I used to be very, I would say, non-conform, not follow the herd. Then for that time, I followed the stream, but it didn't work out, and that's a bit sad because metaverse is one of the few, I would say, concepts which failed dramatically in the last 20 years. If you just get back, you had AI, you had, the SaaS, the Web 2, everything went up and then maybe stacked a bit and then up, but metaverse was like crashing, and yeah, that's sad. That's life.
Indeed, Facebook, initially, when Mark Zuckerberg was introducing the idea, there was a lot of hype, right? I think one of the initiatives within Meta, or formerly Facebook, it's called Reality Labs, where they lost, I think, around $21 billion in trying to develop this concept of metaverse. So it is, I think, very risky when your business idea is so much linked and maybe dependent on the success of this other kind of external factors, which makes it very difficult, right? Puts you in a vulnerable situation. And yeah, your success basically depends to an extent on external factors as well.
Somehow we learned that people were not really getting to the bonanza, to the boom. They were really waiting for the market to stabilize. And we soon realized that it was a problem because the technology was not yet ready to scale. And we wanted to have clients to at least start to build something and to get maybe fundraising, but they didn't help us. So we stood with a little, very little product, and yeah, we were not able to get momentum out of it.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that experience. And maybe another question related to these two projects that you worked on. Looking back, would you have done anything differently with these startups? If yes, what?
Yes. So for my first startup, I really thought about this. And for the first startup, there's something significant I remember is that when I negotiated my proof of concept, I was trying to negotiate with one of the biggest companies in the world. It's a bank, a leading bank in France. And they really put the pressure on me to try to lower the price. And it ended up, I accepted to sign with an amount which was really below the standard. And that was a kind of bitter victory because at the first time I was like, oh, that's good because I have like a good company I can really try to build on. But on the contract, they prevent me from communicating their name. So it was not even possible for me to generate traction out of it. And at the same time, I wasn't able to pay my workers well and to make a bigger team. It's sometimes better not to have bad clients, rather to sign someone who doesn't really pay. So that's maybe one of the mistakes. Something I would change. Yes, and as I told you, what I learned is that I need to dedicate more time in sales, maybe less on the product, to really focus to something very minimal. Even if it's a bit boring or not interesting in terms of creativity, you really need to restrict yourself to the limit, to the minimum, and then try to see if you can scale out of it. I mean, this is how US companies make their. They don't do things big, and then they get money and they can really build on this.
Yeah, I think in an ideal situation, you have a sufficient number of clients. You are onboarded with maybe kind of minimal viable product, right? But then kind of with these clients, then you can test and improve. But I think it is essential to develop the product to an extent because there's always a dilemma. I had a guest in the past who was emphasizing developing the product, focusing on the customer needs, and then doing sales. And sales actually could follow if you have a very good quality product. But I think the reality is maybe somewhere in between, right? You need, especially when your clients are big companies, big enterprises, then maybe having a couple of them to really use your product, and together, if you could kind of then perfect it, improve whatever the features are missing, but having enough number of, I think, customers to be able to really test and improve the product. And sales, I think, after that would follow in a way.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's good to have, I would say, a core functionality you keep. And if they want to have extra features, then they need to commit somehow. And also, you need to have a stable platform. And sometimes, yes, you don't have that minimum requirement. So it's important. And now, I mean, today, the barrier of entry is higher because now companies tend to professionalize themselves in terms of digital solutions. So you need to have API, you need to have cybersecurity. I mean, now the level expected is quite high. Maybe this is why there are less startups created in that area in terms of SaaS, the software as a service. I'm not talking about AI companies, but rather on the software side. Is because now you need to really develop a lot of features to make it applicable for big companies.
Yeah, indeed. It's a challenge to find that balance, like not investing too much of your time and energy to kind of test your product and see if there is a fit. But then the expectation from clients obviously are, they want something that's working, right? Like that's kind of already in a state that they can use. At the moment, you are working on another startup idea. What are you most passionate about with your new business idea? What excites you about this new venture?
Well, it all relates about this Fuck Up Night concept I'm now in charge of in Luxembourg, because maybe I didn't explain to the audience exactly why I really did this initiative. I really think that in Europe we have a lot of good brains, people who are really creators, engineers, and somehow they have problem to scale. And otherwise, in US or China, it's a bit the contrary. They really focus on very little features, but they are really good on making marketing and get access to funding. And so this is why they prevailed on the long time. And so I think we need to change a bit our mindset in Europe and to be more risk averse, more trying to try and to fail quickly. I mean, I had to take 2 years to quit Serpico with one client. It's like it's very long, and I could have really realized a bit before. You don't need to get stuck to such a time. Yeah. So what I want to build is something in relation with this kind of failure. I think there is a quite known statement: one startup out of 10 tend to survive over 5 years. And I think maybe we can reduce that failure rate to maybe 1 out of 4. But that means you really need to provide sound advices to startup founders. Maybe there are people who start their companies and they are not ready. On my case, I didn't say it, but when I created Serpico, I kind of made a twisted market study. I made a kind of biased market study. I really thought that we should change evaluation. We should make another way of evaluating employees. But to be honest, I'm not really sure the market wanted it. And of course, you have much more probability to succeed if you answer to a need rather than trying to create a need. It is very, very rare that you manage to get successful unless you are a company like Instagram. But even Instagram, they knew that somehow the human people need to share things about their life. So they created that need, but they had this, already this idea in mind. If you have other ideas like the one I had with Serpico in the HR, it's much more risky. And then you need to be ready, be sure that the market needs it. So just to get back to what I was saying, we need to assist and help entrepreneurs to be sure they are fit, they have the good teams, they are ready to fundraise in order to be really in the way of success somehow. And if you're not ready, maybe we should say to these people, maybe you should refrain yourself from creating your startup. You are still free to create your business, but yet maybe we think that you need to make some effort before going into it.
Indeed, this is so important. I couldn't agree more. I think in Europe, we're a bit afraid to take risks, want to take cautious steps to make sure we can control. There's a culture of risk aversion among European entrepreneurs. And there's another thing that I noticed as a coach. I often work with entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs. And one thing that strikes me in a way is even ambitious entrepreneurs, sometimes they're not open for coaching or mentoring. They have slightly negative association, or they think that they're doing everything right, that they don't need any advice, or sometimes not being open to external feedback can also, I think, inhibit founders' personal growth as well as the growth of the business. And I think we need to make it okay, acceptable, the fact that you try an idea, it fails, it's okay. It shouldn't be such a shame or looked down upon, right? You should just pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and embark on your next idea, as you have done. You worked on one project, didn't work out, worked on another project, didn't work out. Now we're moving on your next project, which I think this in a way should be more acceptable reality, which would encourage more and more people to try and not give up only after, having one failed company.
I couldn't agree more, Dursun, because maybe also I was lacking some, I would say, help and support from coaches when I really started my first company. I was really working alone, coding, making a lot of night coding, and I was a bit isolated from, I wouldn't say reality. I was just accountable for myself. There was not really a huge follow up. I mean, in some things in Luxembourg, you can get some. If you get some concourse, you can get some coaching. But otherwise, if you're just developing this on your garage, you are completely deprived of any help. So you really need to be strong. But of course, you don't know. You are not able to take perspective. So it would be really nice to always have kind of coach or advices from people just to see if you're on the right track or not.
Yeah, and to seek out external feedback. It doesn't necessarily have to be paid coaching.
So I need to be honest, there's a problem also of pride. I'm an engineer myself, and I really thought that I would be a bit clever than the other people. So, like compared to other commercials or marketer, I would be able to develop the product on my own and be able to sell it because I'm maybe clever or intelligent. That's bad. That's a bad reasoning. It's very difficult. You need really to be humble. And it's not because maybe you're creative or bright that it works. It's a combination of factors, and you really need to, even if you think you don't need to have help, you need to be surrounded by people.
Yeah, no, indeed. I think as a founder, you have to make sure you have the greatest chances of success. And that can only happen if you are open to receive help, to receive feedback, to collaborate, to hire people that are much smarter and more intelligent than you are. I think it requires you to be very, very open-minded in order to really increase your chances of getting where you want to get.
Exactly.
Thank you for this, Guillaume. Now, looking at our listeners, there are a lot of people who are aspiring entrepreneurs as well as existing entrepreneurs, but especially for aspiring entrepreneurs who might also face some setbacks in their initial ventures, or some of them might be afraid. They don't want to start a business because of fear of failure. What advice would you give these listeners?
If they are afraid to create, then first they need to, as I said, it's really good to first make a little market study. You need to force yourself to at least add not only your relatives or your friends, because they're a bit biased. They will always try to motivate you to jump on board. But of course, it's not their risk. It's yours. It's only yours. So it's really good to maybe confront to the real market, to your potential clients, and maybe put, like I would say, a kind of rating. Let's say under 70%, I don't launch because maybe I'm not yet ready to start. So maybe first really make this kind of test. And even if you have less than 70%, you know that you are going into trouble. That doesn't, you are not really, you can still create, but you know that it's going to be riskier than others. So the advice I would say is that start. You can't really succeed at the first. It's really rare to have a combination when you first find your investor, the good product, the good fit with the market fit. It's, there are people who are successful after the third or the fourth attempt, even more. So, but you need to start. It's not, you don't really understand or learn about entrepreneurship in the books. You can, but every story is different. It's about yourself and your personality, how it matches with entrepreneurship. So I would say don't refrain yourself from creating, but be ready to learn from maybe mistakes you want to make and to be better in the future. But don't lose that. Do it.
Indeed. I think if you pursue your idea, even if it fails, it gives you a bit of momentum. If you can withstand that failure and try to learn from that and try to focus on the next project and next project until you learn, maybe develop the skills, identify the right problem, and then eventually I believe that most people will succeed. But it's important to start that to get into motion. So you start thinking also actively about problems that surround you and how you might be able to solve or find the right people who can help you together solve that problem. Thank you for that advice.
I'm just thinking about something else. You should also maybe try to ask your friends about do they know a similar concept to what you're about to create? Because it's always good to make a kind of comparison, and sometimes we miss it. So some people maybe they try the same concept and they fail. What if they fail or they succeed? What will make them succeed? It's important to understand that thing, and sometimes we don't take that time. We really go quickly, and I think it's good to look to the mirror.
Indeed, yeah. And we are reaching the end, but there is one more question I want to ask you. This question was left by previous guest. They left this question without knowing who they are leaving it for. But this question, I think, is very related to today's conversation, and maybe we can slightly adjust the wording if necessary. The question reads, what mindset helped you get through the period when your business wasn't yet in a place you wish it was?
I would say you need to have ideas clear. Sometimes when you are into trouble, you tend to isolate yourself from, as I said, families, relatives. You try to work more because you think that maybe this is the solution. You need to involve more work into it. I think it's important to take perspective and sometimes put some I would say some delay, let maybe some weeks, and try to see what's going wrong and what could change given the circumstances. Because sometimes it can be related to a lot of things, and yeah, I think it's important to identify what could be changed if possible. Because I take this example because I had it in Fuck Up Nights. If you have a lot of workers, then you see the bank account going really down quickly. It's difficult to find a solution to this because you can't really fire people. You need to maybe find new clients in a kind of urgency. But this kind of situation aside, I would say, yeah, it's important to really identify what makes you get into to a plateau and what could change to get on traction again.
Yeah, I think that's important to be self-aware also, right? In terms of the way that you are limiting your own potential, kind of you standing on your own way, which is, I think, also kind of common among entrepreneurs sometimes, right? And then as well to have critical and objective view of the business where it's lagging or why it's stagnating and what can be done to bring it back to motion. Thank you. Thank you, Guillaume. This was such a pleasant and wide-ranging conversation and inspiring conversation, I must say. Thank you so much for coming on the Inside Story podcast to share your journey, the lessons you have learned, and of the importance of not being intimidated or afraid of failure. Failure is part of entrepreneurial journey. I would say inevitable part of entrepreneurial journey, and we grow and develop so much. And I think our business gets to reach points where we might not even imagine in the beginning. So thank you for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you, Dorsun. It was a pleasure.